Asterisk asterisk Joe Rogan was mid-sentence, relaxed, half smiling the way he does when a conversation feels routine, when Anthony Joshua shifted in his seat and changed the entire energy of the room with a single calm line that sounded harmless at first but carried the weight of a wrecking ball, because instead of trash talk or vague hints, Joshua spoke like a man who had been inside the machine and finally decided to explain how it worked. And Rogan's face visibly changed as Joshua began describing how certain fight build-ups don't grow organically anymore, how they are mapped out weeks in advance, how emotions are timed, confrontations positioned, camera angles anticipated, and narratives approved before a single punch is thrown. And the word that made Rogan blink wasn't promotion or marketing. It was scripted, because when a heavyweight champion uses that word, it lands differently. And Joshua wasn't accusing anyone in a dramatic way. He wasn't angry or bitter. He was almost disappointed, explaining that when he watched Jake Paul's rise, the patterns were impossible to ignore. From the perfectly timed beats to the conveniently matched opponents, the press conference chaos that never crossed certain invisible lines, the dramatic knockdowns that somehow lacked follow-up, the moment designed to explode online rather than end fights, and Rogan leaned forward, eyebrows raised, because this wasn't internet gossip anymore. This was a fighter who'd been knocked down, gotten up, fought for real belts, and lived with real consequences, explaining that real boxing chaos is messy, unpredictable, and uncomfortable for promoters, whereas influencer boxing chaos looks loud but controlled, dangerous but safe, explosive but contained. And as Joshua broke it down, he talked about contracts that quietly limit outcomes, about clauses that protect future events, about how certain risks are reduced not for safety but for longevity of the brand. And Rogan interrupted once, almost reflexively, asking if he meant choreography, and Joshua shook his head slightly and said no, not choreography like wrestling, but narrative control, outcome insurance, and moment management, which somehow sounded even worse, because it meant fans weren't necessarily watching fake punches. They were watching curated reality, a version of fighting filtered through business interests. And Rogan sat back, stunned, because it's defended combat sports for years as the last place where reality can't be faked, where consequences are unavoidable, where the body doesn't lie. And now here was Joshua calmly explaining that the body still tells the truth, but the situation around it can be manipulated so heavily that the truth gets buried under spectacle. And the more Joshua spoke, the clearer it became why Rogan looked unsettled, because this wasn't about Jake Paul being unskilled, undeserving. It was about the sport itself being reshaped by algorithms, pay-per-view math, and viral culture. And Joshua explained how young fighters now see influencer bouts making 10 times the money with a fraction of the risk, how gyms are full of talent that may never get a platform because they don't bring clicks, and how promoters who once chased greatness now chase engagement graphs. And Rogan nodded slowly, because he said similar things before, but hearing it from a heavyweight champion stripped away the debate. And then Joshua dropped a line that fully stunned the room, saying that when a fight needs a storyline more than it needs a ranking, the outcome stops being the point. And Rogan exhaled sharply, realizing how many times he'd watched press conferences that felt more like improved theater than genuine hostility, how many stay-at-homes ended with smiles the second camera is cut, how many fighters hugged immediately after supposedly brutal wars. And Joshua wasn't claiming every fight was fake. He was saying the ecosystem reward control over chaos, and Jake Paul, whether intentionally or instinctively, mastered that system faster than anyone else, because he understands that outrage fuels views, controversy fuels discussion, and ambiguity keeps people watching. And as Joshua explained how certain moments are designed to look dangerous without truly being dangerous, Rogan's expression shifted from shock to something closer to concern. Because if boxing becomes a place where perception matters more than competition, then the line between sport and entertainment doesn't blur, it disappears. And Joshua emphasized that the danger is subtle, because fans don't stop watching. They watch more, but they stop believing. And when belief dies, so does the soul of the sport. And Rogan agreed, adding that combat sports only work when the audience trusts that what they are seeing couldn't be replicated, couldn't be staged, couldn't be controlled. And the conversation turned darker as they discussed how commissions struggle to regulate influence, how money pressures force acceptance, and how criticism itself becomes part of the marketing cycle, because every accusation of this is scripted only drives more eyes to the next event. And Joshua laughed softly at that, saying that Jake Paul doesn't need fans to believe him. He needs them to doubt him, because doubt keeps people watching. And Rogan shook his head, almost impressed and disturbed at the same time, because it meant the outraged crowd and the supporter crowd were both being moneized equally. And then Joshua said something that lingered long after the clip ended, explaining that real fighters fear losing because it costs them years, but influencer fighters fear irrelevance more than defeat, because as long as the spotlight stays on them, winning and losing become secondary. And Rogan went quiet for a moment, letting that sink in, because it explained everything from the bizarre matchmaking to the post-fight celebrations that felt too friendly. And when Rogan finally spoke again, his tone had changed. No jokes, no laughter, just a quiet acknowledgement that if even heavyweight champions are starting to feel like outsiders in their own sport, then something fundamental has shifted. And as the clip spread online, fans argued, defended, denied, and dissected every word, exactly as Joshua predicted, because the exposure didn't kill the spectacle, it amplified it. And that might have been the most unsettling part of all. That even when the curtain is pulled back, the show goes on, louder than ever,